Okay. Oh, is this, can you hear me? Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Wasaga Beach never disappoints with the crowds that we can bring out for a meeting like this. This is an exciting evening. We've got a tremendous team up here. I won't go through all of the names individually, but we have representatives from FRAM Building Group, Frank Giannoni, Fred Surfero are here, joined with their colleagues. We've also got representatives from Urban Strategies who are helping to lead the community engagement for FRAM over the next couple days and for the next few weeks until we get a plan. I just wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about what you can expect over the next couple days. This is a process, and we're in the early phases, and it's very important to us that all of you have a voice. I know all of you are passionate about Wasaga Beach. You're passionate about what happens at the main end. So we want to ensure that we do this properly and that you all are part of the process. You have a voice in what actually happens here. All of us are impatient. No one is more impatient than I. We want to get to shovels in the ground and concrete coming out of the ground as quickly as possible. But in order to do that, we need a plan. And you've got the right team up in front of you today to help us get that plan. It has to make sense financially, but it's also got to deliver all of the great things that we're all looking for as a community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over briefly to Frank Giannoni, and then we'll move forward with the program this evening.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. So for those of you who haven't heard me in the last couple of weeks, it's great to be back. We were patient waiting through this, and unfortunately for the town, it didn't get started earlier. But we are looking forward to playing a big part in the revitalization of Wasaga's Beach 1. The difference this time is we wanted to start a bit earlier. Last time, the first time we presented to a crowd like this was a plan that we already had an idea of what we were going to do, and it was on Beach 2. We're starting the process a bit earlier now. I'd be lying to you if I told you that we didn't have an idea of what we were going to do on Beach 1, but we're coming at this with a very open mind, and we want people's participation earlier. So, I mean, tonight you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, but tomorrow the people that are participating in the workshops, we want you to speak your mind. We want you to tell us what you like, what you don't like, both in terms of the form, in terms of the use, in terms of the heights. I will say that we don't envision the kind of density that I think you've heard about over the last 2 or 3 years. We tend to be a little bit lower density. We think that that's what the marketplace is. We know that that's what will get the project done earlier than later. So we've brought together, as Andrew said, we've come together with a team. We've got our development team here, one of our marketing team here as well. They'll be part and parcel of the workshops tomorrow. We got Bennett McNeil, we've got Fred Serafaro, Olivia Warner, Anthony DeSanto, Valentina Serafaro, and we'll let the others present themselves when they come up. I do want to say that we're primarily a developer of mixed-use developments. The residential component is an important part of making this property a commercially viable property, something that allows us to do some of the things that you might want to have on the beach or near the beach, is being able to make the project work. And to do that, we know there's demand for residential. We have to do the residential. If you don't like that concept, whether it's tonight or whether it's tomorrow, we encourage you to speak your mind, because I think the town needs to hear whether you like the idea of development happening or not. We believe it's the right thing to do in this town. We believe the town needs a vibrant mixed-use part of it to be on the waterfront. So please, we're open-minded. We'd like to hear what you have to say. I don't hide behind the fact that we're not an entertainment developer or somebody that will only look at commercial. We've got a vision that includes a commercial component, includes an entertainment component, how much of it and what type of it that you want as a community, we want to hear from you. So with that, Tim Smith from Urban Strategies will do a preparation for tomorrow. And again, we're going to be open for questions tonight as well.
Thanks, Frank. That's a great way to start. A little bit of applause to start the meeting. I like that. I hope there's a lot more at the end of it, actually. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Smith. I'm a principal with Urban Strategies. As Frank mentioned, we're the planning and urban design firm that FRAM has brought on to help really kind of facilitate a conversation about the future of the beachfront, of what we're calling the main end, and I think many of you know it as the main end. So what we're going to do, if you can bear with us, is we're going to talk for about half an hour. Myself and my colleague Dennis Lago here are going to just share some thoughts that we have, share some of the experiences we've had planning waterfronts, and really just try to lend a little bit of inspiration and some thinking to get you thinking and reacting and sharing your thoughts about the future of the waterfront. I think it's very clear from the proposal from FRAM that this should be a mixed-use place, but that's just words. What does that actually mean? What should it look and feel like? What should be in that mix of uses besides residential? We'll talk about the importance of residential, but there's so much more opportunity on the beachfront, I think we can all agree. So we want to hear from you on a full menu of things you'd like to see at the main end. Just a slide here just about the partnership right now. I mean, this is early days. We're kind of in a due diligence period. FRAM is in a due diligence period with the town and exploring what that partnership's going to look like. But the intention is to leverage future development by FRAM for larger improvements across the beachfront, public realm improvements. Transformation of Beach Drive, for example, is something that needs to happen for flooding reasons as well as to make it a much better place. And the intention is that there will be a partnership, but you're really part of that. At the end of the day, what's built here is for you in many respects, and the future residents of Wasaga Beach, and there are many moving to your community, as you all know. I want to begin for the moment. We're going to talk a little bit today about the history of Wasaga Beach, but we really need to acknowledge that the history isn't just the last 100 years of Wasaga being a thriving community and a real tourist destination, but the history goes back many thousands and thousands of years. So I want to start with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada were the traditional stewards and caretakers of this land. We acknowledge that Wasaga Beach is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Tianananti, Wendat, and is home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as part of an intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards the understandings and new relationships and ask for guidance in all we do. All right, this slide just kind of shows what we're calling the partnerships land. This is the focus of the initial stages of redevelopment on the beachfront. The lands identified in dark blue here are the lands owned by the town. Remaining lands, as many of you probably know, are privately owned, and of course, some provincially owned, and as you all can appreciate, the beach is part of the Ontario Park system. A little bit about the process, what we're up to. So, as most of you know, the RFP for developers, this round, happened earlier this year. FRAM was selected in the summer, and we're now, we're kind of into a kind of concept development, concept planning process. And that's going to take place over the next several months. And as you can see here, this is just the first step in engaging you in that process to get your input, and as ideas come forward and concepts come forward in the new year, to get your feedback on those. Once we hope we have really strong support for a plan, then that will go into a development application process. Let's call it a rezoning process to secure the approvals. And there'll be even more engagement as is required by the province through that process. But as you heard from Andrew, there's a lot of eagerness to really get shovels in the ground as soon as possible. FRAM is targeting 2025 to actually launch sales and get shovels in the ground by 2026, which is a relatively short time frame when you think about all the plannings and approvals that are needed. Just a little more detail about the next several months. So there's really going to be 3 major steps and meetings like this. We're going to come back in the winter, probably February, March or so, with an initial concept plan for you all to review and comment on. And then we'll take those comments back, make refinements, and we expect that later in the spring we'll have a final plan to share with you, and that will really kick off that rezoning process I mentioned. The other thing we wanted to clarify too is that FRAM has a very clear idea about where to start developing the beachfront. And it's the blocks identified in red here between 1st and 3rd Street. The red indicates, as Frank has said, that the development there will be mostly residential. There is the opportunity that will be explored for some mixed use, in other words, some commercial amenities along Beach Drive and potentially along 1st Street as well. And the purple area that indicates the future phases of development. And it's anticipated once development starts, there will be incredible momentum to keep it going, and that over the next 10 to 15 years, you will see most of the beachfront, if not all of it, transformed. All right, you had a very kind of quick introduction to the team. I'm going to just point out some people. The reason why we're all here is just not so that you can introduce ourselves, but actually because we want to engage you in conversations, and that's why I'm going to try not to talk too long, because really we want to hear from you through a Q&A period after the presentation, and then we're going to be lingering around, and you can approach any of us to share your thoughts or ask questions. So we have, I'm going to kind of start at the end there. We've got Jason and Michael from the architectural firm of SRM, and then we've got Anthony and Valentina and Olivia. You know Andrew and Frank. Here's Fred from FRAM. Bennett, and my colleagues Dennis and Tatiana from Urban Strategies. All right, I think some of you kind of probably done your homework. You know a little bit about FRAM, and if you were around in 2018 when they made their last proposal, you would have heard a little bit about FRAM. But just want to, for those maybe who are a bit new to FRAM, they've done some remarkable developments, both in the kind of GTA world down there, but also up closer to the Georgian Bay region. And probably the most significant project, which some of you will be familiar with, is the shipyard's redevelopment in Collingwood, which is now really entering its final phases, but it's really transformed that industrial waterfront with some quite, I would say, beautiful housing and beautiful streetscapes and other public realm, including an outdoor amphitheater you see there. Another project that's a little bit older, actually, but looks still fresh and new, is Port Credit Village in Mississauga. And I have to tell you a story. After FRAM built this project, it's like whenever we needed the best example of urban design to take on the road and show other communities where we were working, it was like, let's get this thing from Port Credit. Let's get the waterfront promenade from Port Credit. Let's get that mid-rise building. Because Frank's brother, I have to mention, Ralph Giannoni, who designed many of the buildings here, is a fantastic architect, and together they just created a really remarkable development which still stands apart from just about anything else, I would say, in Southern Ontario in terms of its quality and the kind of places it creates. SRM Architects, you can see here, they've done a range of developments, a lot of residential development, but not exclusively residential. And you can see here examples from Pickering and Coburg and Relia of waterfront residential developments. So they know how to respond to waterfronts. They know how to do good, low, mid-scale developments in a nice way with nice open spaces, nice architecture. And let us tell you a little bit about us, Urban Strategies. We're Toronto-based. Don't hold that against us, but we do work all over Canada. In fact, places all over the world. Dennis has done a lot of work in the UK, including for Cardiff in Wales, as well as in Asia. And then I've worked in all these other places, Hamilton, Guelph, Orillia, Midland, on downtown planning projects, waterfront planning projects, and we work elsewhere across Canada. So we like to think we can adapt our expertise to a whole variety of places. Okay, that's a little bit of introduction, a little bit of background. So I want to kind of just start telling a story of Wasaga Beach from kind of our perspective. And to do that, we do have to start with history. And I know that most, if not all of you, are really familiar with this history. You know this place and know what it once was, even if you've only been here 10 or 20 years. You will know this history. It was the place, and still is for many, many folks in Ontario, to come to in the summer. You've got the longest freshwater beach in the world. I mean, that's just something extraordinary, and it brings thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I think the 1.2 million or something like that, the last count of people come here in the summer to enjoy your beach. And it's funny to see these pictures. It's like the beach was a parking lot. I get that. It's kind of nice when you have a family. You can take your car right up to the beach. That's changed a little bit, but nevertheless, the traffic you get here, not just in terms of vehicles, but people, is incredible. It does set you apart. And of course, it's not just the beach and that experience of the water, the sand, but for a very long time, you had a whole lot of stuff going on along the beachfront. Hotels, your whole Main Street ended right down at the beach, and you had lots of fun stuff to do, that crazy slide thing, whatever it was called. Just a real range of attractions. Again, pretty much all summertime attractions that has to be highlighted, but a lot to do. The last many years, I think we can all agree, haven't been so great for the main end. The fire of 2007 was obviously devastating. And since that time, I think we could all admit there hasn't been a lot of investment, a lot of reinvestment by businesses. The town stepped in, started acquiring properties, really realizing they needed to take a little bit of control here, which is kind of why we are here today. And other things have happened too. Land speculation really kind of kept lands from moving forward with development. The demographics change. We know we're an aging population. I'm a good example of this. I used to bring my kids to Wasaga Beach when they were this tall, but now they're up here. We don't do those family trips to the beach. And you know what? I don't come up here myself because I'm looking for something different than that just coming to a beach. Shifting entertainment and tourism trends. We're going to talk about this in a moment. You're competing with a lot of other places for those tourist dollars. And, I hate to do it, but I blame the phone. It's maybe not fair, but let's face it, a lot of us are kind of using this for entertainment these days. I don't know if it means people are coming less to the beach, but I think it has some impact. And competition. We created this map a while ago to really identify all the places in Southern Ontario that are really ramping up efforts to attract tourists as well as residents, people that are kind of wanting to get out of the GTA. Maybe they're seniors who are looking to retire to a smaller community. This maps many of the places they're heading to. Picton, Prince Edward County, talk about that as a destination that's just changing and growing. Stratford continues to invest in its downtown, and the festival obviously continues to be a growing success. Niagara Falls, even a place like that that's always been a tourist destination, keeps adding things to keep drawing people back over and over again. And Collingwood, one of your really big competitors. You might think of a way that you can benefit from all the tourists that go to Collingwood, but in a way you're also competing with them. But there's the beach. So you're always going to be in a great position to really leverage what you have with that incredible natural feature. And you're doing that. Even if things aren't being built on the waterfront, you're actually hosting events. You're doing a lot more programming. You're doing things that you need to do to bring more life to that space. Mostly in the summer. That does have to be pointed out. Again, it's a 2 or 3 month season we're talking about. Now, there's really recognition from all of you, I think, if I can call you a good representation of the Wasaga Beach community, that there is this incredible opportunity at the main end. And you recognized this several years ago when you initiated a new downtown plan that looked at both the heart of your downtown on the other side of the river, but also the beach, the beachfront. The consultants were calling the beachfront the lungs and the rest of downtown the heart, and seeing how you can connect those and get those places working together. That plan has from our perspective, a lot of great ideas and a lot of things to build on, and that FRAM will be building on with its plans. Principles that to us are very sound. build a place that's not just for driving, but it's for walking and biking. Create an urban place. And what do we mean by that? Well, that means a mixing uses. That means making it walkable. Establishing a focus, a place, a destination, places for people to gather. Focus on programming and activation. Again, you're starting to do that. There's going to be more opportunity as you begin to build new public spaces. And those 5 and 6 there, that's really about having a plan that has a very clear framework that you're building on and sticking to over the many years ahead that it will take to see change happen. And finally, we want to make sure that the plan is feasible, financially sound. I pop up this rendering of the main end that was in the 2017 plan, and there are just some fundamental ideas in this concept plan. It is just a concept. I mean, this is not how the main end is actually going to look, but it illustrates the opportunity, which is still there, to create a mixed-use tourist hub at the end of Main Street, to create an entertainment zone. I think there's a lot of questions now, post-COVID, about what should be and what could be in the entertainment zone, what's viable. And then there's the idea of a resort and residential zone. We like to think of that really as a neighborhood, and we'll talk more about what could make that a neighborhood. And the key public elements, well, the notion of a festival square, a pretty major space to host events and just community gatherings. And we're going to want to have a conversation with you about the size and the nature and how that space should function. And of course, the boardwalk. Every beachfront needs a boardwalk. You have Beach Drive. How can that be transformed into something that's even more spectacular than it maybe once was historically? Speaking of that, I like this image from the 2017 downtown plan. Not just because of the details there. I'm not sure if this is precisely the right design for Beach Drive, but nevertheless, it illustrates the incredible opportunity to show how future development can come up to Beach Drive, put active uses on the ground floor of those buildings, and really spill that activity out onto the street. And this happens certainly, and historically has, with some of the bars and other things along Beach Drive, but not to the extent that it's really possible. And then to have a road, because Beach Drive, we feel, should be a road. We can have a whole debate about whether that's the case or not. We'll show you examples of promenades that aren't roads, but this is a winter city. You need to be able, we were down there today driving along the beach having a look again, and we saw cars coming by and then parking there and just enjoying the waves. It was incredible. So you need vehicles there, but you do need more space, we feel, for pedestrians and cyclists. All right, let's talk about what's changed over the last 5 or 6 years. And I don't think any of us could deny a lot has changed in the world, for the better, maybe a little bit for the worse. We all got through the pandemic, and the pandemic in particular really kind of shook things up. But to start on a real positive note, this region and your town is really booming in terms of population growth. You see there, you're up to 25,000. I have to admit, I was shocked. Someone said, when we started this project, what's the population of Wasaga Beach? I thought, it's probably about 15,000. And then I got woken up to all the growth that's just happened here in the last decade. And look what could be the potential. You're going to get to at least 45,000, if not 50,000 in the next 25, 26 years or so. Now, in terms of the kind of market perspective, and as FRAM as a developer, they have a really good pulse on what the market is. Everyone knows the housing crisis that we're in and the housing demand there is across the country and across this region. That's true, but everyone also knows what happened to interest rates over the last year or two. And that has kind of put a little bit of a pause on a lot of projects. And so that residential market is not as strong as, believe it or not, we'd all like it to be. And hopefully that will change in the near future, but it is in a tenuous spot at the moment. On the commercial side, and this is really coming out of the pandemic, on the retail side, the kind of Main Street, smaller scale retail we'd probably love to see down on the main end, it's really been tough for those businesses. And so there's a lot of uncertainty on the commercial side of the market generally. And we'll have to see, time will tell, what the opportunities will be for opening more businesses down in the main end. No doubt there will be, but I'll tell you right now, and I'm going to repeat this throughout the presentation, is the key is to get people there. Not people just visiting, but people living there. Airbnb. We all know about the short-term rental business and how that's kind of transformed the hospitality industry and has hit hotels. It's not to say there aren't going to be opportunities for hotels in the main end. I certainly hope you'll see one or two down the road, but again, another market with a lot of uncertainty in it. And finally, again, a recognition that the tourism industry is a little bit different now. People are looking for different kinds of experiences and adventures. And the question for you as a community is, are you offering enough for those tourists that are looking for a little bit more than just a beach? All right, I think we can all agree you are unique today, and to be successful in the future, you want to continue to be a unique destination. I say that up front because I'm going to show you some pictures of other beaches, and I don't want you to think you should be like this, you should be like that place. You should be Wasaga Beach, a place that's proud of its history, that builds on its history, but a place that is ready to kind of do some new things on its waterfront. And we want to share some of our experiences. We haven't worked on all these waterfronts, but we've seen many of them, we've been to them, we've learned about them because we think they offer some really good lessons for places like Wasaga Beach. I'm going to start with an odd place, St. Ives in Cornwall. I don't know how many people have been to St. Ives maybe? Any chance? Yeah? Well, a handful of you. Great. It's a pretty wonderful place to visit, not only amazing waterfront, but a really thriving arts community. What I love about these images, it just shows you how when you take your town and you just build it right up to the water's edge, what a difference it makes and what an amazing experience it can create at the water's edge. So that's one kind of message is, let's take Wasaga Beach back to the beach. You have buildings there, but frankly, not enough of the town is there. And when I say not enough of the town, it's not enough of what the town has to offer in terms of housing, in terms of commercial amenities, in terms of public spaces, and other things. So let's talk about how we can take the town back to the bay. Venice Beach. This actually might be a place that you're most like. But again, here's a place that actually brings the city to the waterfront and very significantly gives a lot of space to pedestrians and, as you can see, to cyclists here. A recognition that it's not just about the beach. People are always looking for that place that's not sandy, where they can enjoy the water and the beach, but not actually have to deal with all the sand, and can ride their bikes and just hang out and shop. New Jersey has some great beach towns, not surprisingly, being on the Atlantic Ocean. Cape May is a very actually historic one, and we thought this was a great image. I'll admit, this is one place I have not been to. I've been to a lot of places in New Jersey, but not Cape May. But I love how they actually just really celebrate their heritage here. A little bit different than your heritage for part of its waterfront. And then it has a little bit of what you historically have had, which is all that entertainment and fun stuff and retail. And they really kind of celebrate that as well, really maintain those buildings, keep them colorful, and of course, an amazing boardwalk makes a big difference. Waterfront should be a place for culture and fun, and those are broad terms. What is culture? What kinds of fun? Well, there is the kind of culture which is maybe a little bit, you might think of kind of high-end theaters and concert venues and stuff like that. Those are great, and honestly, I think that's something you should be striving to build eventually in time on the beachfront. It's also about festivals. It's also about programming your open spaces with all kinds of events and outdoor concerts. Fun and culture is also about this stuff. It's about the stuff that you historically have had in Wasaga Beach that I think we'd like to see come back in one way or the other, whether it's a carousel, whether it's an adventure park, whether it's another crazy slide ride thing. That's been such an important part of your past, and frankly, who doesn't still love that stuff? And finally, housing. This may be seem like the least fun part of a waterfront, but I'm going to say it again. This is the most important thing you need in the main end. And you know why? It's not about the buildings. It's about people living on the beachfront. That's what Wasaga Beach needs. You've got too many people maybe in the summertime. You do not have enough people the rest of the year. If you want more people, you're going to have to build housing. And that's what that's the opportunity FRAM sees, it's the opportunity the town sees, and I hope it's the opportunity you all see. Because that's the conversation we really want to focus on today is how can we create a neighborhood or neighborhoods on the beachfront? And what should be in those neighborhoods? What should their character be? What should the streets feel like? What other kinds of open spaces do we need? This is, in our opinion, essential. And I'm happy to have a debate with anyone who maybe disagrees with us. But you go anywhere in the world. I mean, Halifax is a great example. They had a kind of 3-season waterfront for a long time, but maybe 1 or 2 not bad restaurants given the size of the city, but it's only when they started building housing that you start to see more and more restaurants along that waterfront. And I noticed walking around how many dots there are under the waterfront cafe photographs on the boards here. Sounds like almost all of you would love to see a cafe, a restaurant, this time of year, right, on the waterfront. Well, to make one of those work, just one of them, you need that, quite simply. And this is what FRAM does. We've already kind of showed you a picture of the shipyards project in Collingwood. Here's another one. And this includes some housing designed by SRM in Coburg. I gotta tell you, I brought my kids to Wasaga Beach, of course I did. Took them to Sable Beach, took them to Coburg, took them to Sandbanks. But Coburg, being the closest to us, was one of our favorites. And it's because there's the beach, of course, but there's also a wonderful park behind the beach. And it's a great walking experience that includes walking past a waterfront neighborhood and boats. And I want to show you this place briefly. This is Seabrook, Washington, on the Pacific Ocean. This is all pretty new, all built in the last 20 years. This may not be the right character for Wasaga Beach. I suspect it's not. It's very American. But it just shows the transformation that's possible when a community puts its mind to it. This has kind of everything in it. A little Main Street, lots of housing, as you can see, some really nice public spaces. It's kind of a complete village right on the ocean. That's kind of an interesting idea. What about creating a village on Wasaga Beach that's kind of within your town? It's a new place within your town. So to kind of sum up that little series there, in our opinion, these are the really essential things you want to have on your waterfront. They can all take different forms and come in a different way. But to go right at the top there, it's to my first point about bringing the town and creating a kind of face on your waterfront of buildings and activity and public spaces, having a mix of uses, culture and heritage, including the fun stuff, flexible and adaptable spaces. That's so critical for a winter city, a winter town like yours, because it's not going to be activated the same way throughout the year as though this were Florida, of course. But you need spaces that maybe are used for parking in the summer because you have so many people driving here, but in the wintertime can be a kind of winter festival grounds, something like that. Pathways and a promenade, we want people to be walking and cycling down here as well as driving and to have those connections to the beachfront. And finally, housing. And housing and amenities, because people who live here are going to want not only just cafes, but other kinds of amenities. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis to kind of talk about how we get a bit more specific about the opportunities we see in the main end.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to get rooted. We're going to take all the ingredients that Tim has discussed and try to root them in place about what's being special to Wasaga. I mean, the following drawings that we're going to show you are really just ideas. They're sort of thought bubbles. And we expect tomorrow when we kind of work at tables that these bubbles will grow and shift and move around. But this is just the first take around taking these ideas, applying them to the place. What are the key drivers? And these are just initial themes that we want to take you through. And first of all, it's fantastic. I mean, this is a wonderful place. I mean, it has such an amazing geography. It's on the bay. It's incredibly special. We can never kind of forget that this is the nature of the place. I like to call it a great living room. Like, imagine this to being the town's living room. You entertain, people gather, people live there, you invite people, it's messy, it's lots of play. It works all year round. It works at night. It works during the day. So what are the key drivers of change here? The first is, well, we know that Main Street needs to grow, it needs to adapt, it needs to come to the beach. There has to be intensification. This main end is part of that process. And dare I say, I mean, maybe this should be called Main Beginning, because really I think this part of Main Street will actually help catalyze and make Main Street itself succeed if we get this right. One of the key themes as well, as we know, what is the place here? What is the special place? We should focus the energy to create a really unique outdoor space that's very rich with lots of uses, mixed uses that frame it, but that becomes the destination, becomes the signature public square. The critical point that Tim's also brought up during the conversation is that we need to have the population here to make this work. Think of any place in the world that you know that is successful. There's always people living there. There's 24/7 life. What is that mix? Finding that mix is going to be very important. So you can see here the orange just kind of alludes that we need to bring the community to Main Street. There should be people living on Main Street. There should be lots of faces and folks living on the street, but also there should be people on the water. So this notion that intensification, creating a year-round community, intimate, tight, but can also be flexible and adjust to the peaks and valleys of the season that occurs here during tourism. The other key thing as far as the structuring theme is there should always be this shore-to-shore relationship. I think it's very important to kind of know you're on the water at all times. So let's make sure that we create paths to the water, create roads to the water, create public spaces to the water, and it's always about connecting the shores right across the spit. The next idea is to transform Beach Drive. We know it has to be done. It's a needed infrastructure investment that's coming because of the flood issues. But what an opportunity, because as we rebuild this can become a great promenade. It can become a linear square that in itself becomes another signature placemaking feature for Wasaga. Needless to say that it will prioritize pedestrians but needs to accommodate cars. We understand it has a very cultural car value here as far as doing the drive and doing the pass and having that. But having that integrated is kind of fundamental and flexible, that imagine you could close it off for larger festivals and then it becomes a linear square. The trick will be to make sure you invest in materials, high quality materials that can accommodate the car and accommodate the people. But also the grade changes to the water will be interesting here. Terraces, places for kiosks, places for shops, etc., smaller scale interventions. We should really think of Beach Drive as the spine for a lot of these future investments. One other idea we'd like to start bringing up is this idea of natural and cultural heritage, that whatever we do here should really speak to the landscape and ecology that is Wasaga, that is Georgian Bay. So what are the materials, what are the plants, how do they organize spaces, how does this become a way to really celebrate what Wasaga is? It's not sort of a cookie cutter landscape from somewhere else. It's very much about the dunes, about the marshes, about the spit itself. So how can we interpret that to kind of make this a unique and special environment? The next thing we're thinking of is how do you accommodate the incredible spike in the summer of people? And how do you design for that? So for instance, can we look at, and this bubble diagram just looks at the north end saying, how do you plan for flexible uses, event spaces, festivals, etc., but actually plan for it to occur in particular locations that when they're not there, they succeed as being public realm investments. But when they are there, they're able to accommodate this sort of elastic nature of growth that happens here. And it becomes basically an amenity year-round for the community. So then what we did here is just the first take of this sort of thought bubble diagram. And it really says, I'm going to come out here so I can see it. It really says, first of all, that's a bad idea. Hang on a second. I heard myself. The main thing is the public realm, and basically making sure that development frames a really spectacular public realm. Oh, was that a pointer? Oh, okay, there we go. So the first thing is, Main Street comes down, and, right now we envision an idea of creating one spectacular public space. What that is, we're going to talk about. It needs to be framed by a lot of mixed uses, a lot of the different types of uses that bring life and activity and economy to the space. We've shown in this particular diagram this notion of a kind of wishbone public realm where you could have a kind of smaller scale, intimate muse type of connection, but it's all about this idea of going from Maine to the water with clear views to the bay. What we're showing in dark orange is essentially a bit of a mixed-use residential quarter that gradually transitions to residential as we move south. You can see on the blue, essentially this shows, an idea early on that the streets and the paths and the public realm systems need to kind of go from shore to shore. So how does that help kind of structure how development should occur here in the long term? And this notion that this great promenade from Spruce right to Third kind of links well with Beach Drive as this notion of a kind of cohesive public promenade right to the water. The next idea is that this isn't in isolation. We should really think long term. And how does this system of kind of development here's my laser, on Main End actually perhaps connect to the mainland? So is there a notion that we can, in the long term, look at growth on Main Street being connected on River Avenue, perhaps bringing in Nancy Island into the picture? Do we create a loop that connects Moseley and River Avenue? And really start to pull that energy of future growth at Main End right up into the mainland. And then stepping further back, like this is obviously, this could be the center for an incredible, which is already emerging. There's a whole series of growth nodes which aren't shown on here. They've sort of popped off, but there's a whole series of growth nodes. Oh, there they are. That really accentuate this rhythm of being, active and intimate with the water's edge, these sort of centers of economy, of which Main End should really be the biggest one. And this is really the symbolic nature where nature and a wellness and health and other kind of program all kind of congregate to the town. Yes. So that was basically the early thought diagrams. We hope, tomorrow to kind of continue to work on these and continue drawing up different variations on these themes.
Okay, I think we're just about done talking and ready to hear from you, but just to kind of talk a little bit about what we want to do right over the course of the remainder of this evening, but in a more focused way tomorrow. We have 2 workshops during the day, same event. I do believe they're actually fully sold out now. I think we've got them all full up. Who signed up for the workshop tomorrow? Okay, good number of you, but not all of you. Okay. If you're not able to make one of the workshops, please come by tomorrow night, come back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, because you will get to see everything that came out of those workshop discussions. What we're going to do in the morning from 10 to 12 and in the afternoon from 1 to 3 is have conversations around these 4 topics at the bottom you see here: public spaces, amenities and attractions, mobility, and character, specifically character of a future mixed-use neighborhood in the Main End. And we're going to share all that at the end of the day. So I do hope that to see most, if not all of you, back tomorrow evening for the results of that. But with that, we are now ready to stop talking and hear from you. So we've got an hour or so where first of all, we have a microphone there. Actually, we have 2 microphones where we can get questions, comments, and then maybe we all run out of energy, we can kind of go back to the boards. Thank you so much for folks who put dots under their favorite images on these boards. If you didn't get a chance to do that, please do it before you leave tonight. But let's open it up for questions. Would you mind actually going to a microphone so everyone can hear? Yeah, the best thing to do if you really want to make a comment or ask a question is line up behind the microphone, and hopefully the lines won't get too long. Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Is this on? There we go. My name is Trish. I'm relatively new to Wasaga Beach. I've moved here a year ago, and this is where I'm looking to retire. And it's a beautiful community. It's stolen my heart years ago, which is why I've decided to retire here. My question is, the partnership between FRAM Developments, I believe, in the town of Wasaga Beach, I don't need to know all the details, but it'd be nice to have some transparency. Mind if I take that off? Thanks, I'm a little short. I'm tiny. I'm just curious what the partnership details are. Was it leased? Did we sell portion of the land? I think everybody here wants to know what the details of that are, because I'm hoping we didn't sell and we keep this land forever as part of Wasaga Beach and just do a joint lease project with the development company.
Can you hear me? Perfect. So we have not got to that detail yet. What we are in right now is called the due diligence phase. So FRAM with their consultants are looking at the opportunity. They're going to be creating a plan. In parallel with that process, we're going to be having discussions with FRAM about what the partnership looks like. So rest assured, nothing has been sold. Agreements have not been signed. All of that will be transparent. It will be shared with the community. I don't know the details of what the deal will look like just yet. We have been looking at the ability to sell land on a phased approach. If you're going to be, there will likely be some mixed use with condos as part of this. So that land would need to be sold in order to turn around and sell it. Will all of it be sold? I don't know, because we need the plan first until we can figure out what that is. But so nothing has been sold, nothing has been signed. We're going to be working through that process over the next little while.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Frank, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so the residential component, as Andrew stated, would likely have to be privately owned. The public spaces that we create, there are two ways to do it. We can do it where it's completely publicly owned. That's basically what we did in Collingwood. That whole waterfront, although we did the work initially, the town paid us back over time for the work that we did, and that's all publicly owned. We've also done communities where land is publicly accessible, so that there's a right of access onto lands that are privately held but publicly accessible. We've used that effectively to create squares that need to be maintained at a higher level, that need to be maybe a better quality material, something that the town might not do right away. So we've done that in Port Credit, if you know the little hills in the middle. That's a public square, but it's privately owned. In Brightwater, we're doing a similar square, done the same way, where it sits on top of a parking garage, so it's privately held, but it's publicly accessible. And when I say access, I mean it's constantly accessible. So it really comes down to who spends the money, how is it spent over time. In Collingwood, it was spent by us, but the town repaid us for it, and therefore it became public space.
Okay, thank you. One more quick question. Would the residents of Wasaga Beach, the current residents, be allowed or offered the first option or opportunity to purchase property on the beachfront? Just asking.
I haven't thought about that yet, but I would say to you that when you look at our past waterfront developments, as soon as we advertised that we were coming, the first people that got on the list were the locals.
course.
We can show that out because, number one, they know the area. Number two, they've participated in these forums and therefore have a pretty good handle on what's coming. Like if we look at Port Credit, our first launch of the first 750 units at Port Credit, which was multiple phases, probably 80% came from within a 5-kilometer radius. Collingwood, most of our buyers in Collingwood either were already living in Collingwood Blue Mountains or had some history there. We saw the same thing most recently in Orillia, where our first group of buyers were people that were from the area. So, I mean, you're going to be paying attention. You're going to have the first opportunity. As soon as we mention it, you're going to be up on the list. And
Do you work with any hoteliers? Got a connection there?
we have not yet, but
Maybe
it
we
is
can
something
discuss
that. Okay, great. Look forward to it. I'm sure Andrew would like to know that as well.
I didn't mean me personally, but if somebody has a connect here, because that would be awesome, because all these people are coming and they have nowhere to stay.
Yeah, that has been something that, going back 5 years ago, was something that we were trying to do back then. We don't have the connection, but there are some people that have inquired, and we'll try and develop that. You'll see tomorrow, if you're involved in the discussions tomorrow, there are pieces of property that were offered offered through the proposal call that we've freeze-dried. We've said, this is a property that should maybe be more than just our regular residential. And we've done that, I think, to 3 or 4 of the blocks and created opportunities to do something more.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Deborah, and I'm happily retired in Wasaga Beach. I've lived in beachfront communities across Canada, including White Rock, Victoria, Vancouver, even the beaches of Toronto, and in New Brunswick. Just in designing and planning the waterfront, what I'd like the team to consider is, one, height of buildings. And I'd like you to look at the sun, where it is on the beach now. And if you're planning a 4-story building, and residents, bear in mind that when I was at a condo at Friday Harbor, my ceiling was 10 feet. And the people of Innisfil restricted the height of those buildings to 4 stories. So it cast quite a large shadow on certain parts of the day, because the main floor, where all the shops was about 15 to 20 feet high. So even with a 4-story building, for example, the new seniors building by the Foodland, that's a tall building, and that's only 4 stories. So imagine if we allow 6 stories or even higher, with condos being 9 to 10 feet each, and then you've got your 1.5 feet of infrastructure, concrete, etc., between floors. So I would like you to consider the height of the buildings, and particularly people go to the beach for sun. So if those buildings are going to cast a shadow until 2 p.m. during the day, then that may be a problem. Another consideration is parking. Where is the parking going to be? Because right now we have a lot of parking. And from what I've seen in your diagrams, I haven't heard one word about where people are going to park. Or would it be possible to build a parking pool somewhere along Main Street and then have buses to the beach? So that's another consideration. And personally, I would like to see a lot of more imaginative architecture, a little more beachy. I found that the proposal by one of the developers, not FRAM, the buildings look like office buildings. So I'd like to see like a Myrtle Beach kind of Florida, a little more beachy theme, because that's also going to attract the tourists in here. And right now, we have a double arena opening in January. And when I lived in Huntsville and they built a double arena there, Huntsville had a whole tourism industry built around sports tourism. But Huntsville held the G7, and they had the facilities. They had Deerhurst Lodge, and all these other hotels and facilities to house people. We don't. So I'm asking, as part of that phase 3, why not a hotel, conference center, hotel combination, but also with that phase 3 development, I didn't see any continuation of the shops and restaurants. And I would like to see that, the shops and restaurants continued along phase 3, if possible. And the other thing is, I'd like the developers to keep their hands off, Beach 2. I'd like Beach 2 to stay in its natural state.
Okay, I'll start, and then I'll let the team jump in. You touched on virtually everything that we're going to be touching on tomorrow, so thank you so much.
I can't make tomorrow's meeting. So.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you came out tonight to share your thoughts. Let me start by saying one of the things we have going for us right now is we have a developer and a development team that isn't afraid to engage with their community. I'd like to give credit to FRAM and Frank specifically for that. That's how we'll get it right, because that creates the conduit between your ideas and Frank and team are listening. On the shadows, I'll start with that. The one good thing we have going for us is that we face west. If you've been down to Florida, on the east, the Atlantic side, you get about 3, 4 in the afternoon and the beach is just dark because all the shadows extending. You go to the Gulf side, and you get beautiful sun virtually the entire day. So we are actually facing the right direction. We can't ignore microclimate. We can't ignore shadows. That'll be part of the process, and whatever we design and build, we'll actually do shadow studies so that we ensure that the beach has sun on it, that the shops and restaurants are comfortable year-round. But we do just remember the westerly facing makes it a little bit easier for us. I won't speak for FRAM, but my sense is that they're much more receptive to lower density than what perhaps was being pursued over the last few years. Personally, I think that's much more appropriate for Wasaga Beach, a little bit lower scale, lower density, so that we can get that real beach character in a lot of these buildings, and it's friendlier to pedestrians. Parking is absolutely going to be one of the issues that we have to figure out. And it's a combination of figuring out where parking goes, perhaps structures in the future, and also a management plan, shuttles, etc. I will share, not to knock the last few years, but parking was being completely ignored over the last 4 years. I think that was a mistake. You can't ignore parking, particularly because of the crowds that come here in the summers. We can get 80, 100,000 people show up on our doorstep on a great summer weekend. You have to have a parking strategy and a parking plan to accommodate that kind of influx. I'm drawing a blank on what some of the other comments you had. Architecture.
The height.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the height, I think Andrew did refer to the fact that we look at this development being primarily low-rise. I mean, again, if you look at our history, that's basically what we did in Collingwood along the waterfront. We're now doing the only 6-story building that we'll be doing in our lands in Collingwood. Even in Port Credit, where it's significantly more urban than here, our first development and our first phase was the townhouses. And so we believe that that's where we're probably going to end up here with mostly low-rise. We'd like to hear what you think low-rise is tomorrow. You've said what you've said, and that will definitely be taken into account. On architecture, SRM got referred to earlier on, Michael and Jason down at my far left. They were part of the architecture team that put together our thoughts 5 years ago. We're ahead of this now. I thought they did a great job, and in those days we were tasked with developing Beach 2 and developing Main Square. And I thought they did a great job with the architecture and the feedback that we got from the town citizens, and then reincorporating that into our plans. though we were chastised on Facebook for building cookie cutter developments, I don't think you saw anything up there that was cookie cutter. We will do architecture, as Tim said before, that is Wasaga-based architecture, something that you can be proud of, that will set the tone for Wasaga. We don't know what that is. We're not suggesting we're going to go back to what we presented 5 years ago. We're very open-minded going into this process, and we'll be part of the process tomorrow to get your feedback on that. And please continue to give us feedback on this.
So I just have one more question. There's a building site across from Harvey's Restaurant on Main Street, and I believe your former town planner, Doug Hedron, said that was slated for a hotel. Is that still in the plans?
I don't know. Trevor, our director of planning, is back here. I haven't seen any new concepts come forward. They were pursuing a potential gas station years ago when I previously worked here. Have they come in with any new concepts recently, Trevor?
So the developer actually of that property, I think it's 304 Main Street. Is that the one you're talking about? Okay.
It's across
It was a
from-
four-story
it's across from
hotel. Yeah, it's a
Foodland in Harvey.
Yeah, it's the gateway onto Main
It's
Street.
where the old gas station was.
Correct.
So it was going to be a hotel and a gas station, and we had an agreement ready for them to sign. They chose not to sign the agreement for site plan approval, and my understanding is that they've since sold the property, and we have not seen any new applications on it since.
Okay, thank you. I just have one last comment so other people can speak. And I had a condo at Friday Harbor. It was a lovely community, but the Airbnb people drove me out. So they created such a nuisance at all hours of the day and night that I left and I sold my condo. And gladly, I'm in Wasaga. So I'm hoping that the town will really limit the use of Airbnbs.
Yeah, no, that's a great feedback. And when Frank and Tim and the team talked about building a real community, I think that's part of it. I live in Port Credit. That's home base for me, in addition to Wasaga. I actually used to live in the development Frank built, and it's all end users. It's a great community, and it's not overrun with Airbnb. So we'll try and strike the right balance for Wasaga Beach. I think a hotel will be very important to the redevelopment. Just to speak to the question earlier, town staff have actually been out actively reaching out to hotel developers. We're hoping we can attract one to this development and work in collaboration with Frank and his team. But again, we'll see how this all unfolds, but we're thinking the same thing. Yes, sir.
There will be a need for a parking strategy, and it'll be a parking strategy that you'll need to update every 2 or 3 years, quite frankly, with each phase of new development. But I'll make one general comment based on my experience, is that if you have a parking challenge, that's okay, because all those places I showed you have parking challenges. They figure them out, they find solutions, but what parking demand tells you is that your place is popular. But there is a whole range of solutions, and actually you made actually some good suggestions. Should there be a pool of parking created somewhere else and you shuttle people to the beach? I could see that being an option down the future. A parking structure, they're expensive, but maybe there'll be an economic argument for that one day. So my one general comment would be to say, let's not make parking strategy the driver here. Let's not like wrap a plan around parking. Let's figure out what we want here, which I hope is not all surface parking, and then figure out the parking solution that goes with it. Gertrude.
Hi. I haven't prepared anything, so this is going to be off the top of my head. But I believe in like more the merrier. Like I don't understand the logic behind not having 20, 30-story buildings down at the main end, just so it's full of life and full of fun. And I think like I'm wondering if there's any arguments against that kind of density beyond people just complaining about it. Like if it's, you know, like why Brightwater? Like I love what you guys did at Brightwater. All those buildings look wonderful, and I think some are 20 stories plus. Sure. I can. Is this loud enough? Okay, all right. So yeah, beyond, you know, I guess NIMBYs is what they call it. Is there any reason that we wouldn't do 20, 30 stories at the beachfront? Is there any like engineering issues? Because I have a property that's close by, and my engineer said 10 stories, bearing capacity was completely fine, and that's personally what I'll be going for. I'll be trying to get 10 stories at my site. Right. Okay. There's no trees at the main end, so I think that's a moot point.
So I'll start with a couple of comments, and then I suspect Frank may have some points he would like to add. In addition to scale and perhaps being a little out of context for Wasaga Beach, now take a look at the old historical photos of Wasaga Beach. Those old buildings, they were all wood frame. There were 3, 4, 5. I think there was actually some 6-story buildings down on the main end. There weren't a lot of them, but they were there. 20 stories, in my opinion, and I worked in the GTA. I used to be director of planning for Brampton. I worked for Mississauga for many, many years. I've been involved in 40, 50, 70-story towers. I think that's out of place in Wasaga Beach, and lower scale. You can see by the reaction. I think that's what the community's looking for. But the bigger, more important issue, apart from the community's desire and the kind of place they want to build, is absorption. If you were to put one 20-story tower up, it would probably take you a decade to sell the thing and probably years and years to actually get it built. So you might end up with one tower, maybe 2 down on the beachfront. That doesn't make a great place with a couple big towers. We just don't have the demand here to create downtown Toronto, Etobicoke's waterfront, Mississauga's waterfront. So you would end up with very sporadic tall towers. Whereas if you go a little bit lower, you squish the buildings, you can still achieve pretty good density, but you actually create a more vibrant place. There's been all kinds of theories about building 6 stories and less. People interact more with the urban environment. They walk more. They'll go to shops and restaurants. There's all kinds of studies about tall towers. You drive, you go in your parking garage, you take the elevator up, and your amenity is looking out the window or on your balcony overviewing. But you don't engage a lot with the urban realm. So when you look at the whole package, I think shorter is probably more appropriate for Wasaga. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so at the beginning, you probably heard me say that we look at properties to make them commercially viable, to make them worth our while, number one, to invest money into them, to make it worth the town's while, to work with us in terms of what is acceptable. Not to burst your bubble, but the commercial viability is affected by absorption. And the best example for you, if you need something close to look at, is Collingwood. Collingwood is actually far lower density than what it was approved for. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when you're building a building that's more than 4 stories or more, your cost of building that building goes up considerably. Now you're competing against low-rise development that can undersell you in terms of what the price is. So you're comparing a high-rise or mid-rise price has to be higher per square foot than what you would be on a low-rise basis. So you're going to absorb the low-rise component faster, far faster than you would absorb a building. We're just now at the point after, what would we buy it in, Fred, 2003? So we bought Collingwood in 2003. We're now doing our first building that's more than 4 stories. Yeah, it's a 6-story building. And that's all that market can absorb. And whenever we launch it, we're hoping to launch it next year if the market's there. Whenever we launch it, we're hoping to sell it within a year and be under construction. If you're doing more than that, it's going to take you significantly longer to sell people are going to lose interest in it. You just have to look around this room to see who the majority of our buyer is. When you get the majority of our buyer is going to be an empty nester that wants a flat that doesn't have stairs, that is accessible, easy, and walkable. So it's one thing to not fit into the community, as Andrew said. It's another thing to make it commercially viable, that we can do it in fairly short order.
Right. Okay. Thank you for commenting on my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Goody. Is this on? Thanks for engaging with us tonight. I appreciated the presentation. In your presentation, you alluded to the fact that you're going from shore to shore, and the main end has really two waterfronts, the beach and the river. And perhaps this is a question more for the town. Is there a vision for how that riverfront is going to get developed over time? Because I think that's perhaps the more four-season part of the main end.
The riverfront could be world-class. There's no question. The challenge is the municipality does not currently own the riverfront. The majority of it is in private ownership. The town does have a couple of sites that have riverfront access. But what we can do is influence through planning, influence through our regulations, the kind of thing that we would like to see along the riverfront. Marinas, river walks, that type of thing, I think would work quite well with the type of vision we're talking about. So that is absolutely something that I think would work well. So we will try and influence a lot of the private owners to try and work with us so that we can get a river that's as worthy as the beachfront, and ideally get it to the way Dennis was talking about, where the river works with the beach. So I agree completely with that. It's just the question today is we do not own those lands.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, we're going to be talking tomorrow about the entire main end. So those lands are certainly lands we'd love to hear comments on, because this is an overall concept plan we're doing. But I will also tell you that once development starts in the main end, hopefully it will be FRAM doing that development, it will spur those private landowners to start to take action. The value of their land will start going up and become viable for new things. So that change will follow these first phases of development through the partnership. You can bet on it.
Hi, my name's Tom. I'm not much of a speaker, but I had to get up here. I'm passionate about Wasaga, and I retired up here. I've been coming up since I was a kid. And what bothers me is you come into town, and it's like a desert. There's nothing. And then you go down to the beach, and it's packed. And then in the summertime, there's a lineup of cars all the way up. And you guys are looking at crowding the beach more, eliminating the parking, and not doing anything with the lost space from Harvey's right down to the beach till later. Why aren't you developing that now? And then bring it down to the beach. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Like you could do residential up those lots there right up to the bridge. But you're looking and focusing it, doing it all down by the beach. That's going to be a nightmare for the infrastructure.
Yeah, so I think what we're talking about is doing both. The question is phasing and timing. And where do you start? And Frank certainly has built more communities than I have, and he can talk about the strategy. But what I would share is the vision here is to create a downtown with a main street that leads you to the waterfront. All of what you see today when you drive along Main Street, the goal is to have that transformed. Again, low, medium-rise, mixed-use development. So we've got a vibrant, year-round Main Street, a little more protected from the harsh winter winds that you feel out there today. But the question that we need to focus on now is, where do you start? Where's the kindling that Tim talked about that you can spark other things? Because the town does not control all these lands. FRAM does not control all these lands. A lot of it is in private ownership. Frank, do you want to talk about where you start?
Well, can I ask you too? Not to be disrespectful, but it seems that Fran wants to be down there because you're in the business of making money. And if you build the residential, you could sell those places like that. Are you worried that you can't sell them if you started up on Main Street?
Well, I think Main Street should be more commercial than residential.
Well,
So
go
if-
into Collingwood. It's the same, like you've
But I
got,
didn't build that Main Street. We had the luxury in Collingwood of having a Main Street that
Yeah.
was there already for us. So what did we do? How did we help their Main Street? We helped their Main Street by putting people there permanently. So their Main Street was in pretty good shape, but it's in excellent shape now because of the people that we brought to it. Nobody can deny that. If you look at what we did in Port Credit on the waterfront, we did the waterfront first because the waterfront creates the highest value. The higher the value we create, the more likely that all those landowners that are along Main Street will redevelop their properties. If we wait for them to start, because the town owns one piece of land along Main Street, if we wait for them to start, you'll be waiting forever. But if you can imagine at the foot of Main Street, you put a square in there, which doesn't make a lot of money for us as a developer. You put a square in there and that creates value going east-west, and it creates value going south, right? And then all of a sudden, people can start to look at it and say, how do we develop? How do we do things? You can see that that's happened in Collingwood already, where properties off the waterfront have benefited from what we did on the waterfront. You can see definitely in Port Credit how it's bounced around to other parts of Port Credit because of what we did on the waterfront. I'm a firm believer that you start at the waterfront because that's where you create the highest and most value. Definitely us as a developer, we will make money on doing that, but we won't develop otherwise. Right? That's our business. We invest a lot of money to create those spaces and to sell who we sell to. But we don't own the Main Street. We have to create value for the Main Street, and then it'll bounce all the way up Main Street.
but do you honestly believe that there's enough land down there to develop and have the roads? Like, I mean, it's a nightmare in the summer.
There is no doubt that it is a challenge in the summer. So you may not like what I have to say,
Well, say it.
okay? But if we're busy
Yeah.
in Wasaga more than just the summer and it starts to extend over, I've done my job right? We did that in Port Credit, and in Port Credit, people complain about not being able to find a parking spot. There are lots of parking spots, it's just not right in front of the store anymore, right? Because there are people all over the place that want to find a place to park. I look at what we did in Port Credit as a significant success. People that preceded me by 20 years see it being a busy place and too busy for them. But the real challenge was creating a place where people wanted to be and wanted to be all the time. I have no problem you saying you don't want that, all right? You should be saying that to others, and maybe you talk to the town.
Everybody here probably agrees with that. It's a nightmare trying to get around in the summertime.
So you don't think that we can improve the waterfront in Wasaga by doing what we're doing? If that's your position, you should say it. And I don't know if that's the majority of the people in this room.
Well, I'd seen a plan, on the original plan before everything got kiboshed, was that you guys were gonna do like a causeway in between. I think something like that would work, but there's no mentioning on that in this plan.
Yeah, so there's a few points you're touching on. First of all, you manage traffic, you don't solve traffic. But I remember years ago when I was here in my first stint working for the town, one of the things I did was I asked the crowd to yell out great places that you like to go spend time and money in. And I won't do that again tonight, but virtually every answer that came back, they were all busy places. Think about where you like to go on vacation. I would be willing to bet that place is busy. And the places that aren't busy aren't usually the ones that are top of your list that you'd like to go and spend time and money in. So great places, successful places are busy. They are. But those places learn how to manage that, and it's through parking strategies, it's through traffic plans. There's been a plan on the books here to build a third bridge for 30 years. When stuff gets that busy, that's when you make those investments and you do things to alleviate congestion. You never solve it. You invest in people movers. Look at those whole old historical photos in Boston Pizza. There was a people mover on Wasaga Beach back in 1950 when the crowds were 10 times worse than they are today. So we have a long way to go to actually get back to the crowds that were here in the mid-1900s. So if any community can evolve and learn how to deal with congestion, it's this community, because we've dealt with it. We've dealt with millions of tourists coming here. So that may not be what you want to hear, but successful places are busy. They are. Yes.
Hi there. My name's Peter. It's more of probably a comment than a question. I live in Wasaga. I work in Collingwood, and I'm proud that where I work, we support disabled people. We have a motel in Wasaga that was substantially impaired in its value by a rezoning by the previous council. But to get to the point to the matter today is we're probably the largest employer of people who live in Wasaga that Wasaga has. We have almost 200 people in employ, and over half of them live in Wasaga Beach. I don't know, I look around and I don't see any of them or many of them. My concern is this: the people here are like me, old. Your timelines,
Who agrees with that statement?
Yeah. I'm either going to be dead or gone. I hope not, but that may happen. The reality is I'd love to see a whole bunch of young people giving their input to this, because it's theirs forever. Mine will be a fleeting moment. So to that end, Andrew, and you and I have had this discussion before. You said you're impatient. I feel like I'm doing this again, and I'm running out of time. So, Frank, I've talked to you before. I'd like you two guys to get on with it, whatever it is. And that's my comment.
I love those comments, and thank you so much. And to be clear, the kind of place that we're looking to build here appeals to all demographics. We're not building a retirement home. We're building a place where everyone can be comfortable. The types of events that will be down there will be family friendly. I think many of you know my story. I've grown up in this community. I came back for my kids, who are 11 years old, and they look at me every summer when we're down on the beach and they say, "This place is boring." And it breaks my heart, because I remember what this place used to be. This place was not boring when I grew up here. Water world, slides, amusement parks, it had everything. So if we can bring some of that back, then I think we're doing it right for the next generation. I'm here because I want my kids in a few years to be able to say, this is a cool place. I love spending time here. Yes.
Hi. So fully going to disclose, new to the community as in February of this year.
Welcome.
Thank you. I love it here. One of the things I love here environmentally is there was a part of the beach closed off at the, really bad with directions, hopefully east, not really sure, end of the park, because there were birds that come here and are safe here. So I would never want to lose that. I also am so proud to say, just because I saw it, I participated in sunset yoga on the beach. When people ask me once a week why I commute to downtown Toronto for a 3-hour one-way commute, I commute for sunset yoga on the beach. So I would never want to lose that. Realistically, FRAM has to make money. I'm fine with that. But we have a physician shortage across Ontario. We actually have one across Canada. We are trying to, the mayor, I understand, and council are trying to address that with incentives. It's not addressed yet. There's no high school here, so kids commute to Collingwood. I understand as a developer that's not your focus, but those things need to be incorporated by this town. Tomorrow's afternoon meetings, not great for people that work. So I really think big picture-wise, we need to be very cautious about moving forward. I do think this town needs to move forward. My husband and I spent many days trying to walk the beach in the winter. It wasn't great, or February, March. It's run down. It needs redevelopment. I fully support that. We were also at the Memories of Summer, great end of year. It needs somewhere to hold that. But environmentally and logistically, do we have the water, resources to put new development in? We need to think financially about where that part of it is going as well. We need doctors. We need a high school. We need to have that in place as well, and while that's not FRAM's problem, I don't have an opportunity tomorrow to speak, so I took it now. Thank you.
Excellent points. I'll just quickly respond to a couple of them and agree completely. You may have heard recently the announcement about the partnership that we're exploring with the school board, Conestoga College, Lakehead University, Georgian College has now called us and said that they're interested. So we're working as aggressively as possible to bring not just one high school, but two here in the short term. So we desperately hear that. From the top of our lungs, we've been telling the province that we need that basic infrastructure in this community. We're larger than Collingwood.
But we turned it down, I understand, a couple of years ago. And that's not on this council, but I do understand the high school was on the books and we said, not interested. So,
right. So
we have to own that.
We're working hard to bring all of that stuff here. On the environmental side of things, I'm going to show my bias. I have a love-hate relationship with our plovers. They're cute little birds, cute as can be. The challenge is when they come and nest on the beach, the rules are thou shalt close that beach for 10 years. And that's why you have that fencing that goes up. And the regulation is actually supposed to be a lot larger than they've been fencing. So you get some plovers down there, they could close the entire main end to our tourism industry. That's a challenge, so we have to be careful. We are all, we believe in being environmentally responsible and we will do everything possible there, but there are some challenges and the plovers are one of those challenges. We love them, we respect them, we want them to breed and be healthy, but we also have to be cognizant that if we lose our beach, it undermines our only economy and a lot of businesses will go under. So there's a balance there.
One very quick last question, sorry, because we did a land acknowledgement at the beginning and I'm probably really far off on this, but I'd just like to confirm it. Nothing like what is now happening at Salvo Beach could happen here. Are we governing properly under the treaty that we're supposed to be doing is my question.
Yes, no, Salvo Beach is a whole other situation. First Nations have been integrated in that community for many, many years, so it's a different situation. There is still a treaty here, and we're respectful to First Nations, and we're actually actively, Carla in the back there, who works with me, is actively reaching out to First Nations so that we ensure we build those proper relationships.
Thanks.
Agreed. Something to manage. Yes.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I've recently also moved up to Wasaga Beach. I have a bit of history because my grandmother lived here for many years and I grew up here when I was very young in the summers. I think the concept of developing on the beach is a great one. I'd love to see more action downtown. I think it's quite, desolated any time of the year other than in the middle of the summer. But for most people who are living here now, they'll tell you that when it's really, really packed downtown or like on the beach area, the locals don't like to go there for various reasons. And I think we need to look at improving as someone mentioned earlier, the infrastructure is really important. You talked about the examples in Port Credit. I lived in Port Credit for many years as well. They put a lot of investment, the city put a lot of investment into the infrastructure, into making it, Lakeshore Road is a 4-lane road, gets traffic in and out from along the waterfront quite easily. They built a new library there. They upgraded all the schools, the bus systems, the GO train places, the parking, all that there. So the accessibility is really important, because right now the problem we're having is we can put more people there and make it wonderful, but if people can't get in and out, it's just going to be more of a mess. And the locals don't even want to go downtown right now or into that area when it's really packed. We'll divert, we'll go around along the river to get, to go shopping at Walmart or in that area, but going right into the main area is just really difficult, and we need the infrastructure. In Collingwood, also same thing. They were having trouble with all the new development, overdevelopment. They couldn't get, people had issues with getting water, sewers. So are we factoring all that into this development project?
So absolutely. So you've touched on a number of points. I'll try and keep the answer brief, and then I'll pass it along to anybody else that wants to add to this. On the infrastructure side, Wasaga is actually really well positioned. We're about 50% water and sewer capacity. Collingwood, Clearview, other communities are in real trouble right now, and they're having to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to allow them to grow. So we're actually in a really good place. When you talk about locals not going to the main end, there's a problem there that we need to fix. And part of that problem is there's nothing there that's attracting you there. I've always believed you build a community for the locals first, and if you get it right, the tourists will come. But this needs to appeal to all of you. It needs to have shops and restaurants and things that you like to go to. You take your kids or your grandkids down there as well, and it's a fun place. And that's what Wasaga always had. It's what I call a dependable destination, where if it's rainy and cold, there was always something to do. So the formula got lost over the last few decades. We need to bring that formula back. The formula did work, but locals first, tourists second. Then you need to think about the type of tourists you're attracting. And the challenge today is the product that we've been offering appeals to lower end day trippers. We don't have quality accommodation for longer stay families. Village of Blue, Collingwood attracts longer stay families. So we need the basic infrastructure that will attract longer stay families. They bring more money, they spend more money, they're more respectful to your community. And when they get here, they tend to walk more and not drive as much. So day trippers bring a lot of traffic in and out, whereas when you get the longer stay tourists, they're a little easier on your infrastructure. So, but ultimately it's about the product offering that is actually resulting in a lot of these issues. So I'm hopeful that through this process we can fix a lot of the root cause, get back to what we used to do, which was attract longer stay families. That's what Wasaga Beach was for 50, 100 years. So we bring that back, but we're in a good position from infrastructure.
I would just add to what Andrew said. He's absolutely right. Getting people to stay more than a day will be key and help in managing your traffic. I'm also going to say, quite frankly, that when you have an asset like you have with the beach, you're always going to have that traffic problem, and you're always. Many of you are not going to want to be down at the beach when those crowds are there. It's kind of a fact, and I think it's going to be a trade-off for many of you living here. I don't know, I think of a place like Banff or any of these major Canadian tourist destinations that you can't keep people away, and I'm not sure you want to keep people away because it is good for your economy, and you're sharing your assets. What we're trying to do, when I say we, I think it's kind of everybody at this table, quite frankly, is to really take that asset and make it much more valuable to you as a community. And it goes back to Andrew's point about creating a place for you. But I'm telling you now, it might not be a place that you enjoy on any July or August weekend. But maybe you'll enjoy it on a July, Monday evening, a Tuesday, Wednesday evening, go to the beach, it'll be a little quieter. And you know what? September, October, November, December, January, February, those months, you're going to love it much more than I think you love it now. So I think that's the perspective we have to bring to this. We're not trying to push people away. If anything, we want more tourists coming here, staying overnight, but we want to create a place that really is for the community first. It's just going to be a very popular place at the end of the day for those 2 months of the year. But it'll be great for all of you, much better for the other 10 months. Let's go to him first, because we heard from you once already, but we'll come back to you again.
Sorry, Tim, can I just, so one of the things also to keep in mind is on the residential front, the people that we sell to are people that want to be where it's a little bit busier in Wasaga. So it starts there. So they, number one, they want to be there. Number two, they're already there, right? So they're not part, like, and we've seen this in Port Credit, definitely, seen it a bit in Collingwood. They're not part of your traffic problem because they're already there. And for you as the locals, the ones that will continue to live where they're living and not buy from us, but for those of you who will want to be part of what's going on at the beach, if we do our job right, as we've done it in other places, we're creating spaces that will encourage you to come downtown. There'll be a square that you can go sit and you can hang out and you can have something to drink and enjoy the sunset. I mean, the places are there now already, but they are what they are right now. We want to create a better place that will encourage you to come to it. And whether it's on the weekend or whether, as Tim said, it's during the week, that'll be up to you in terms of what kind of crowds you like, what kind of busyness you like, and how easy is it for you to get there.
Hello, my name is Paul. Good evening. Just one brief comment because it's getting late, but I heard that line which kind of concerns me a bit, which is let's not make parking main driver. I kind of disagree with that. Say you guys put 600 units, that's 1,000 cars right off the bat. So this is a fact. It's a limited area, and parking and traffic should be your key design objective. You cannot design and build neighborhood and then say, we'll be dealing with traffic later. No, this is your key design objective, and that's pretty much all I had to say.
Let's not make the mistake of, we will be required by our buying public to have enough parking for them in terms of what their uses are. You know, in Collingwood, we have more parking than you would have residentially in the city because they want enough parking to be able to not only park their cars, but also their children's cars and maybe their grandchildren's cars. So how much parking we have to provide for those people that will buy from us or that will lease from us is going to be in our best interest. The parking problem, I think, that most people recognize in Wasaga is in order to do that, we're taking up a bunch of parking that now is used by the public that are the day trippers, right? So that's the parking that you got to figure out that you need a parking strategy for. Having had some experience with it, we're confident that with a proper parking strategy, you can deal with that. And whether it's busing people in, whether it's moving people to other edges, but the ability to park in a prime location right on the waterfront definitely is going to be a challenge for somebody who's coming up just for the Saturday.
Thank you. That's the answer I wanted to hear. I think you guys know what you're doing, but just a concern.
And one thing I would add to that, down at the main end, there's actually quite a bit of parking. It's not well used. Out on the Spit, many of you have been out there. This summer, the province changed the rules of how you can actually park there. I went down there on a July weekend. It was 30 degrees, beautiful day. Went out on the Spit. That's a parking lot that can accommodate almost 1,000 cars. There were 12 in that parking lot. Went to the town-owned area where all the shops and restaurants were, and you couldn't find a parking spot. It was full, 100% occupancy. So the issue wasn't that there wasn't parking close by, it was how it was being managed. So that's really important that the town work with the province to unlock the parking that's already there. And there's another lot just on the other side of the main end. So there are multiple thousand parking spots within a 5-minute walk of the main end. We just need to use it better and manage it better. Thank you.
And you have time to figure out the traffic problem as well, because nothing's going to be built for a few years. So there's time to work it out. I want to clarify too, as we're developing a redevelopment plan, we will be thinking about parking. My main point was not to kind of wrap the plan around parking, because someone will say, we need all that parking, so there's no room for development. So we got to find something to do with the parking so that we can free up land for buildings. Back to you.
Hey, I was going to bring this up in one of the workshops tomorrow, but it was an idea for air rights that would appease the local ratepayers that exist in this generation, and then make room for any changes in decision making in the future. But I see it all around where I live, and they build on top of existing 4- and 6-story buildings, add another 10 stories. So I think that to appease the locals this time around, maybe just build 6 stories, but build in a way where we can modularly increase the height in the future, and have the ratepayers cover the delta, the cost between doing conventional, say wood-framed 6 stories, that'd be cheap, but instead do reinforced concrete and steel, so that the future generations can decide to add another 10 stories or 20 stories or whatever. So, you know, it's something that can be done for the future, like not just the current residents.
You're thinking that 20 or 30 years there'll be a different crowd here who wants taller buildings.
I'm sure there
I
will
wouldn't
be.
put money on that, but you know, we've heard your comment. I don't know if that
Yeah,
is.
you may be in the minority on that one. I
So
suspect.
the important part, though, is because there's a big cost difference between, you know, stick framed and what could handle building on top of in the future. But through development incentives and you know, credits and whatnot, cover that cost for FRAM, because I don't know why profit's a dirty word, but we all, like I think probably everybody in town wants FRAM to make money and come back and do more great things in town and just develop here for the next 50 years. So yeah.
I would encourage you to take it offline and have a chat with Frank. Frank has built, yeah, he'll be here tomorrow. Frank has built 20, 30-story buildings. He knows how to build tall buildings. He's telling you might want to think about it, so you can learn a lot from Frank and have a chat tomorrow.
Sure. Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
So I've been in the building industry for about 28 years, never worked with FRAM. When I heard that FRAM was coming to Wasaga Beach, I turned to my husband and I did a happy dance. Because what you guys have done in the past, everything that you've touched seems to turn to gold. The fact that you're considering doing the main hub first, what I don't think everybody understands is there's no profit in that. The fact that they're considering doing 4, possibly 6-story developments is going to bring high revenue individuals that are buying properties that are going to help with the infrastructure of Wasaga Beach long term. So it'll deal with parking, it'll deal with bringing in a hotel. A hotel's not going to come in right off the bat. They have to see the core that draws people in. So I really want to commend you guys on how you're setting it up. With the planning department working hand in hand, I think you're going to actually make Wasaga Beach fantastic. And on the plover front, I'm on New Wasaga Beach, so I'm impacted directly by the plovers. And a beach that was almost all sand has now been consumed by vegetation. The only reason we have a beach right now is because the water levels are low. So it's a balance of environment and economy in order for the community to succeed. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
I hope, I have my voice. My name is Philip. I gather that the trend for future development is what they call net zero. Is it possible to make this development net zero?
All right, we got the tough question right at the end, eh? Yeah, so net zero. There's different type of net zero, first of all. I mean, a lot of people talk about net zero energy. Some people talk about net zero carbon. And so it's a broad terms. I know we live in a challenge world when it comes to sustainability, comes to climate change. Without dwelling too long, I personally take great pride in developing greener building, more sustainable building. The day of net zero energy is coming soon. Where, generally speaking, where it's a lot easier is in the low-rise, single-family townhomes, wood frames. So we're in that realm where the cost difference going from a home built to building code standard to a net zero energy, it's getting closer and closer. And so we're probably on the cusp. We have FRAM Build Energy Star Home, which is 20-25% better than code. We build Hard 2000 homes, which are 50% better than code. When you get to net zero energy, you're into the sort of 80 and 90%. So you will see them soon. It's like I said, it's easier on the low rise. The high rise building gets a little more complicated because of cost required and how to get there. But so that's on the net zero energy. Net zero carbon is a lot more complicated because now you look at the carbon and embodied carbon, operational carbon. So I don't want to get too much into it, but I think building codes are changing. There's a new building code coming out in 2025, and actually there won't be an Ontario building code anymore. It will be across the country. They could basically amalgamating all the codes. And so if things stays the way they are, there will be a future fairly soon, I'd say within the next 7 to 10 years, where most building will be net zero or close to net zero. I hope I answer your question.
So I had Fred answer that question because I had no clue what he was talking about. No, I'm serious. I have quite a bit of understanding of it, but I have enough understanding that Fred, who's my brother-in-law, says this is what I want to do from an energy perspective or from a sustainability perspective, and I just nod my head. I say, okay. So we're quite proud of the fact that we've been a leader in what we do. We were Canada's biggest R2000 builder when that program was in place. We were a pioneer in LEED. We're doing a building now for Peel Housing Authority that's 40%, 50% better. We're going to be doing one in Hamilton that's even a little bit better than that. So, we're pushing the envelope as much as a builder of our size would push it, and it's really under his leadership. So, talk to him about it.
Just, if it's going to be necessary within 5 years, 7 years, it's going to be the law. Isn't that the time frame of your proposal for the development?
So, I mentioned building code changing. They're not going to get to net zero in 2025. I think there is plans 2030 to get close to a net zero. So
six years.
That's assuming that things don't change. Depending on our federal government. Obviously, we have a liberal government now, and they're pushing. But I can't speak what's going to happen next. But generally, based on everything we hear, yes, we're trending in that direction in the next, say, 7 to 10 years.
Perhaps for the later phases of development, it'll be quite possible, yeah. Okay, boy, you really managed this meeting well for us because it's just about 9 o'clock. But I have to say, we're not like running off in 2 minutes. We're going to hang around for a little bit, so if any of you want to come up and chat with us and ask questions or share any thoughts, please do. As I mentioned at the outset, please leave your thoughts. Actually, probably should say please leave your dots at the presentation panel. So if you haven't had a chance yet to give them a quick look, it doesn't take long, just kind of look, see what pictures you like and put a green dot by it so we kind of know what you really want to see as part of the main ends redevelopment. So thank you everybody for coming. We'll see some of you tomorrow at the workshops. I hope to see the rest of you tomorrow evening.